Hey everybody, Ron here. I just wanted to record this video about my campaign prep, how I do it. This is something I promised, so here it comes. I just want to make a couple of notes. Number one, I have some potential spoilers for my current D&D campaign. So if you happen to be a player in my campaign, there will be a warning for that and also timestamps on the video so you know where you can skip. Secondly, I have 2 small children, so there's noise from time to time. I will do the best to cut that noise out, but it's unavoidable. So I apologize in advance for that. Thank you folks for sticking it out with me, and here is the video. I promised that I would be doing a video about how I prep for campaigns and game sessions. And so this is what this video is all about. So as you can see, I have my campaign planning template up on the screen here. And I'm going to turn away from the camera and drive. And every now and then I'll be turning back to the camera to talk a little bit more. But basically, I'll be explaining things on this sheet here. I have my campaign planning template, which is actually a Microsoft Word doc that I pulled up in Google Drive. I mostly manipulate it in Google Drive because it's just useful to me that way. And as I mentioned here, the purpose of this template is really to paint the big picture of my campaign. I use this for D&D. I have run an Esper-Genesis campaign with it. I'm currently planning a One Ring campaign with it. This is just my current iteration of my campaign planning template. It evolves over the past couple of years, and I'm really enjoying it. I take a number of inspirations for the different aspects of my campaign planning template. I have read the Epic Guide to Campaign Creation. I'm butchering the title, by Guy Flanders. Basically, it's the guy from How to Be a Great GM YouTube channel, and I found that to be I found some of the stuff to be a great way for me to frame my campaign stuff. My session-to-session stuff is mainly from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master by Mike Shea, and I pulled some stuff from John Fourr, and there might be some other bits from elsewhere. Oh yeah, I'll get to a very important bit, one of the key bits for my campaign planning when I get to that section of the sheet. I set up the master plot, and I talk about the master plot. This is the meat and potatoes of the campaign. It's basically this is the sentence, the thing that's going to drive what the main villain of the campaign is going to do. This stuff will happen whether or not the PCs are involved. Of course, with the PC involvement, they can slow things down or even thwart the plans. It starts in the frame of a sentence, and the sentence structure is: so and so wants something by a certain time and is having difficulty getting it through certain means because of some external threat. Now, later on, I'm going to go through my current D&D campaign as an example, and then we have a theme and a genre. Actually, I don't really use the theme and genre much because I feel like they're self-defined, but I still have it there. And then I talk about the master plot outline. This is also from Guy's book. What this process does, it helps me have a framework to run my game. So, the master plot outline. See, the Nemesis always has a plan and oftentimes a backup plan. How will they achieve what they want? What will happen if they achieve it? This may be useful to represent as a clock from Blaze in the Dark or a Ministrack from Ironsworn, or whatever is useful. So there's 4 basic steps to the Nemesis's, say that 5 times fast, plan. They obtain something, they build something, they test it, and then they execute. For example, the Empire wants to squash the rebellion for good and rule with an iron fist. Well, those pesky rebels are messing up their plans. And so they have to obtain key elements like dissolving the Senate and capturing key rebel leaders. Obviously, the building segment of their plan is building the Death Star. It's fully operational. So the test is to blow up a planet. Oh, look, Alderaan, that one's convenient. And it also should reduce the morale of one of those key rebel leaders. And the final execution of the plan would be to blow up the rebel base and crush the rebellion for good. Obviously, that did not happen. Why did that not happen? The PCs. So, but ideally, that's the way the Empire's plan would have gone, as an example. We next get to the campaign plot points. Now, this segment is one of the main discoveries that I have made. There is an author named Dan Wells who took inspiration from I think it's the Decipher System Star Trek Narrator's Guide, where it had this 7-point system to plot out adventures, and he uses that to plot out his novels. And apparently, this process has become really popular with authors. Well, I thought, man, this would also be a great way to help plot my campaign. I can outline the key points in the campaign that are supposed to happen, where you can have your upward beats and downward beats, and the campaign can have some sense of narrative flow. Now, understand, I am not saying that my campaigns are a novel. I can adjust these because I have players, and players change things. Otherwise, what's the point of being a game master? I can just go write a novel if I just wanted to, to everything to go according to my plan. But there are 7 plot points in a story, and I'm going to go through them step by step, and I write these in a certain order, as you'll see. The first plot point is the hook. This is the starting point of the heroes. It's basically the steady state world. It's the part where you get the gang together to start the campaign. The next thing is what I call the inciting incident. This is the event that sets your story in motion and moves you from the beginning to the midpoint. This is where you can introduce the conflict of the campaign and your hero's world changes. So this is basically where the heroes actually set out on the journey. The next point is the first pinch point. It called in writing, it's called the pinch point, but I call this point the pressure point. So this is where you apply pressure. This is often used to introduce the antagonist, and I think it's a pretty good point to introduce the main antagonist, or at least one of the major antagonists. Then next after that, you have the midpoint, which the heroes move from reaction to action. They determine that they must do something to stop the antagonist or antagonistic force. Next is the crisis. In novel writing, it's called the second pinch point. I like to call it the crisis. This is where you apply even more pressure. And then your story takes the ultimate dive here. Your heroes are at their darkest moment. And they maybe have lost everything, or they realize they're about to lose everything. And this can be a really dramatic moment. The next point is the pivot. Here you move the story from the midpoint to the end, which is the resolution. This is the point where the heroes get the final piece of information to achieve what they set out, or they have the penultimate victory, the victory that springboards them into the resolution. This is the climax of the story, or the campaign in this case. Everything in the campaign leads to this moment, to this point. Here, the heroes, the PCs, achieve what they set out to do, or they don't, depending on what kind of ending event that you want. So, I laid this out in order of the campaign plot points, but as you can see, I mentioned what order you can write them in. You actually begin with the ending in mind. You actually write the resolution, the climax first, and then you go back to the hook. Then from the hook, you go to the midpoint. That basically lays your frame, beginning, middle, end. You want to start with the climax because that helps you, build your outline with some semblance of a logical flow. Then from the midpoint, you go ahead and you got to write the plot points, the inciting incident, and then what I call the pivot. And then finally, you will write the pressure point and then the crisis. And I think that this system works pretty well. I have done it a couple of times. I'm running a D&D campaign based, using this system, and it's working really, really well for me. And I'll talk about that soon. Now, one of the ways I like to start with my hook is having a unification event. This is something I borrowed from John Fourr. He talks about having a unification event. So you got these 4 questions for the unification event. What faction, community, or group does the party belong to? What just happened that turned your party's world upside down? What will happen to your character, to your character if the party cannot solve the problem? And you try to get personal if you can. And then what would your character gain by solving the problem? So I basically answered this question collectively for a party, or at least for a couple of people. You'll see with the example that I'm going to show. This is going to be a long video for me, by the way. And then I mentioned I want to do some minor plot threads. So other plot points that are fill in the blank or focus on the characters. And like I say, each PC should ideally have a 3-section arc. I don't know if I've ever held to that, but it's just a starting point. And finally, we have the session checklist. This is how I prep from assessing a session. This is from Mike Shea's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. I have tweaked it just slightly, but that's what these tools are for. So, in the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, he outlines 8 steps for planning a game session. And they get you in a position where you can really just prepare to improvise, right? You should come out feeling confident that you'll be able to handle a game session well. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to review the characters. What are the characters' names? What are their goals and motivations? You want to have that in mind. And then you want to have a strong start. Just like, I like to think start of Indiana Jones. That's a strong start. All 3, I say 3. That should tell you what I think about the 4th one. All 3 of the Indiana Jones movies, they start with something strong. They start with some action or intrigue, and it's pretty cool. And it gets the players engaged in the game. Oftentimes, I like to start with combat, but you can start with other events. Next thing I do is scenes and locations. Now, Mike has scenes and fantastic locations separated, but I like to combine them because oftentimes location is tied to a scene when I do it. Next thing is secrets, clues, and leads. You write 10 1 or 2 sentence secrets that the characters will learn throughout the session. Now, the key is you don't plan for them to be discovered by a particular method. You just have to be ready to reveal them whenever the opportunity arises, and it works pretty well. Next, you have important NPCs. I think that's pretty obvious. You might want to give a little description of what the NPCs look like and act like and what their goals or whatever. Then you have relevant opposition. Now, Mike wrote the book for D&D, so he talks about monsters, but I made this more generic because I'm running more than just D&D and fantasy. Like I said, I'm running Esper Genesis. I actually outlined a Deadlands campaign that I never finished, but that kind of stuff. Then you have special rewards, aka treasure, and then that's actually the session checklist. And then I have a point for post-session notes where I jot down brief notes on what actually happened. And that is the system. I am now going to take a moment and pull up an example. Okay, so it is at this point in time in the recording that I am going to say that if you are playing in my D&D Eberron game right now, this is not the time to be watching. There are spoilers coming. Please do not watch from this point forward. Actually, this is what I am going to do. I'm going to put timestamps in the YouTube video so that you can skip to the next chapter. But from this point forward, there are spoilers for the game, and do not watch. Thank you. Okay, so this is my current Eberron campaign. I call it the Rage of War campaign because the main villain is Raktokesh, the demon overlord, whose nickname is the Rage of War. You see that pretty picture? That is from, I think, a previous edition. No, this is the 5th edition version of Raktokesh. So I'm going to go through this quickly. The master plot. Raktokesh wants to escape his prison by breaking the seals and is having difficulty getting it through intrigue and intimidation because the chamber is working against him. And you see his outline, his obtaining, there's 3 steps to his obtaining. To obtain the components for release rituals, which he's done. Obtain the location of the 13 prison shards through spying, intrigue, and intimidation, which his network has done. And then obtaining key information against the chamber, which he has done. So, right now, it says the first rituals are complete and portions of Raktokesh start to form in his domain. That is done. Building. The second step in the building is the power release draws the followers of Raktokesh and an army starts to form. That has not happened yet. And then make their plans to deal with the chamber. Obviously, this is in progress. So the testing is the army makes their mark on the land with the initial attacks, and then he'll take out key members of the chamber. And then finally, the execution, if Raktokesh is successful, is that as the last of the shards is shattered, Raktokesh is fully freed, and then he and his army lay waste to the land. We'll see if that happens. Now, the campaign plot points. As you can see, I've highlighted the ones that have completed, and as a matter of fact, as of this recording today, I've just hit the midpoint of the campaign. So the hook was the group gets together and deals with remnants of the cult of Sandthrax, led by a shadow horror. I actually changed that. He's not a shadow horror. He wasn't a shadow horror. But the cult of Sandthrax was one of the major antagonists in my previous Eberron campaign. And so I thought it would be a neat way to tie in the previous campaign and just really springboard into this campaign. The inciting incident was that this group found out that the Sandthrax cult remnant is being used by a servant of Raktokesh. Their pressure point was the group learns that the main servant is Mordekash and confronts him. And then, relatedly, Karnath starts to get aggressive with Undair for Scion Sound, which is off to the north of Corvair, the main continent of Eberron. The players don't know this yet, but that has happened. So I mentioned the midpoint is, after the confrontation with Mordekash, the group gets their first key victory and starts to learn how to lock Raktokesh up for a long time. So that just happened. The crisis of this campaign is Mordekash gets a major victory and gets really close to his goal of releasing his master. Now, I don't know how all the rest of this is going to happen, but this is kind of my plan, and oftentimes stuff comes up. And sometimes the players do so amazingly well that it just makes these points obsolete. The pivot point is the group confronts Mordekash and gets the final info they need to lock him up, which in this case, I know that the final info would be Mordekash's ring. I did not know that when I wrote this outline, but that has come through play and me planning. And then the resolution, the climax, the epic climactic battle with Raktokesh in his home domain in Khyber, and that needs to be really wild and weird, and I'm looking forward to running that. Now, the unification event for this campaign is what faction or group the party belonged to. In this case, it was Septimus Cannith, who is basically ruler of Cannith South right now, has a decree to root out the rest of the cult of Sandthrax. And so what just happened to turn the party's world upside down? Well, there was a town called Riverhill Valley in Brelin that was so devastated that they were sent out to investigate. So this was something that was weird, and it was suspected that something nefarious was going on. So what would have happened if they couldn't solve the problem? The cult would have grown to become a major problem again. And so I thought that was some pretty good stakes for that part. And then what will your character gain by solving the problem? They can potentially put an end to the cult. And as far as I'm concerned in the campaign, they've already passed this point, and the cult of Sandthrax is no more because they have earned it. Then I have some plot threads. I mentioned Agus and Maria, two of the players in the game, had destroyed a cell of the cult of Sandthrax. They defeated who they thought was the leader, but the actual leader was later revealed in the campaign. I got some other stuff here, so some plot threads. I'm not going to go through those. And I got a section where I just read miscellaneous notes that I need for the campaign. Including in this campaign, there are 13 prison shards to imprison Rakto Kesh, and I know where 9 of them was and their current situation. And I actually have 4 more to be determined, but we'll see how those work out. And then I mentioned found some interesting intelligent foes that will be on brand for the campaign. And then I had, in my section here, I had a section for the characters, including the party with summaries of their backgrounds and whatnot, their XP, because I use a custom XP system. And then I have a list of the NPCs so I can keep up with them. So that works pretty good. And then, of course, the session checklist. And let me click here, the document outline. We just finished session 14 of the campaign. I expected this campaign to go about 25 to 28 game sessions. So, yeah, that is basically it for the campaign. I'm also just going to summarize where the campaign is in another video, so we won't deal with that for now. So, that is what I do. That's an example of what I do to prep campaigns and game sessions. So, you can see an example of a game session list here. Sometimes I just improvise the monsters that I need and the rewards and everything like that. Of course, I've been running D&D for quite a while, so I have a pretty good sense of what kind of opposition would make sense for situations and treasure and whatnot. So I hope you folks got some insight out of that, insight into my process and whatnot. It was really fun to do. I anticipate that my process is going to continue to evolve. Until next time, see you later.